So just because your favorite guy supposedly takes 5 grams of test a week doesn't mean that he's looking better because of it. He might just be causing more side effects because of it too. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
Hey, this is the Game Triple H from the WWE. You're watching RxMuscle.com, the truth in bodybuilding.
RX Television, RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. We are just a week out from the Arnold Classic, so we look forward to bringing you all the coverage from the 2023 Arnold Classic from Columbus, Ohio in a week's time. Obviously, Chris Aceto and I will be on site live. We'll be doing all the interviews, all the wrap-ups. Dave Palumbo will be back in studio. So as soon as prejudging lets out, the night show, the finals let out, they will be going live. So you're going to get wall-to-wall coverage of the Arnold Classic. We have a lot of questions to get to. So let's get right into them. A mix of training, mix of gear, obviously, and some Arnold-related questions sprinkled in as well. First 2 questions on the show, of course, from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. First question, I bought an app for testing hemoglobin on my phone. Takes a photograph of your fingernails, gives you a number. Well, my number came back anemics, like 12.5, 13.8 is the minimum for men. I'm trying to see here. I am to worry. The question is, should they take liver aminos or iron pills?
First of all, any app that takes a picture of blood and analyzes the iron content, I'd be a little nervous about it, to be honest with you. If it's saying you're anemic, I would probably go and get retested, like by a real lab where they actually draw real blood and they do the analysis. Because first of all, most bodybuilders, especially guys who take gear, usually have high hemoglobin, hematocrits, and red blood cells, not low. And secondly, it just doesn't sound like a very accurate test by going by color, So, I'm sure at some point in the future, it'll probably be a lot more accurate. But I remember when they came out with these blood sugar testers too, to be able to do similar things by testing blood sugar, with just by having a watch around your wrist. And I don't even know what they were using to measure the blood sugar. It was very inaccurate as well. And they still haven't perfected that unless you put a probe into your arm, So, and that's that freestyle Libre. So I wouldn't do anything. I would go to the doctor, get a complete metabolic panel and see what your real red blood cell count is.
Second question, again, from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Some of these questions, and I'm not trying to be facetious when I say this, just, they look like Google Translate output, some of the way that they're phrased. And again, so I only say that so that as I'm reading them, nobody looks at me as if I don't know how to read. The question is, you did a lot of time, 1 day biceps, 1 day triceps. So this is actually a repeat question, but this question was asked on our Instagram forum last week regarding splitting up leg day into maybe 2, if not more, workouts. So again, the question is 1 day quads, 1 day hamstrings to improve the leg development.
You really can't compare doing biceps and triceps on because I used to do biceps and triceps on separate days just because I wanted to really prioritize my arms. Biceps and triceps are like it's a hinge joint. The elbow is a hinge joint, so you're really, you're only moving one plane of motion. When you do legs, that ball and socket joint, okay, that's your hip joint, moves in many different planes. And when you're squatting, it's a multi-joint type of situation. So you really can't isolate just the hamstrings when you're doing hamstring curls. I mean, for that exercise you can, but if you're doing squats, or you're doing leg press and you're lowering the weight, that's all hamstring. So whereas if I'm doing biceps, I'm not using my triceps. And if I'm doing triceps, I'm not using my biceps. So it's not a good analogy, Whereas I always felt that if I'm doing my squats and my leg presses and or hack squats, I'm working my hamstrings already. Now, that doesn't mean you can't throw an extra hamstring day in a week if you have weak hamstrings. But if your legs are weak and you're doing double leg workouts a week and it's not working, it's probably because you're overtraining your legs. You're not giving them the ability to recover properly. And I personally have found, and this, I said the same thing last week, that undertraining, or I shouldn't say undertraining, I should say training a body part that's weak less frequently is probably better for growth. But when you do train it, make sure you're really training with full range of motion, high intensity, make sure you're extracting every last rep out of that muscle. You're not cheating. You're using good exercise form and execution. And I think you're going to see much better results doing less sets, okay, less frequently, but with more intensity. And that's what I found with my weak body parts, especially arms. And that's why I did it. I did briefer workouts. I mean, literally biceps would take 20 minutes, triceps would take 20 minutes, their own day. I didn't do 25 sets. I did 10 sets, or 12 sets, for triceps, but I made them all count. And I can do that because I wasn't worried about doing any other exercises on that day. And I allowed them to recover. And that's how I really built my arms from being kind of weak, to being one of my best body parts, So it's all about prioritization. Now, I want to just make a statement about the Dave Palumbo Experience app. These two questions are great questions. They came from the app members. So if you sign up for the app, you get access to all my videos, all the writings I've done over the years. We put up a workout every single week. I answer everyone's questions in an open forum, so everyone's questions and everyone's answers. And that's a learning tool in and of itself. Plus, I take the best questions and I do a Q&A video, just like I'm doing on Ask Dave here, but that's an extra video every week for the app members. So it's a really good learning experience. It's a great value. A lot of people really love it. I got great reviews on the thing. People really get behind it 100%. Also, I want to mention my Secrets to Becoming a Diet Guru course is coming up this weekend. So it's not too late, guys, to sign up. You're going to learn how to be a coach, how to write diets, off-season, pre-contest. You'll learn everything there is to know about the macros, carbohydrates, protein, fats. You're going to learn all the micronutrients, minerals, trace metals, vitamins, and of course, essential fatty acids. And then we're going to go over all the drugs as well. Now you can go to my DavePalumbo.com. Put this up here for a second. You can go to the DavePalumbo site, .com site, and you'll see the poster on there. You click on that poster. It's for this Saturday, February 25th. It's from 9 a.m. Eastern Standard to 6 p.m. with an hour for lunch. $600. You can click on that. It'll take you to the Palumbo University site. You sign up. Great thing about the course is not only do you get to take the course live and ask me questions all along the way, but you get to watch the replay as many times as you want because the whole thing gets taped in the actual app itself. Plus, you get my 100-page manual that I wrote. All my secrets, all my protocols I developed over the last 30 years of doing this, and all in one place. You have a real great reference book that you can read at any time and go back to and set up protocols, especially if you're getting into coaching and you want to know how to write diets. They're all there. You can kind of just customize them based on the person you're working with. So it's a great, great tool. It's something that I'm very passionate about. I really feel like I need to educate the next generation of coaches in this industry. And even for people who are not coaching, just want knowledge for themselves, it's invaluable. So check it out. It'll be this weekend at Saturday.
Let's go to our Instagram questions again. If you're not already following us there, the handle is official_RxMuscle. If you're watching us here on YouTube for the first time, subscribe below. We welcome you to the channel. Reminder that all throughout the course of this upcoming week. And then, of course, next weekend is the Arnold Classic. So we're going to be having Arnold Classic preview segments. We just recorded yesterday, Dave Palumbo and Kevin Lavroni. He gave his thoughts across the whole spectrum of topics related to the Arnold Classic. We just recorded earlier today with Milos Sarcev and Mike Francois, 1995 Arnold Classic winner. They gave their thoughts. So we have chock loads of preview content that's going to be going up on the channel throughout the course of the next few days. And then, of course, next week in Columbus, Ohio, Chris Aceto and I will be there live on site. Dave Palumbo will be covering from the studio, but we are going to have you fully covered, so you're not going to want to miss anything. Subscribe below, hit the notification bell. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below. And as always, we appreciate all of your support. Let's go to a good one here, because we do get a lot of these questions regarding, I guess, combos of products. So there are readily available combo options available. I guess he calls it the black market. You may want to call it the gray market, but combo options which claim to have high potency per ml. For example, I saw EQ test formulation, which boasts 500 mg ml, 300 mg ml of EQ, 200 mg ml of test. My questions are: one, can such a formulation be possible to make? Two, would such a high potency formula be painful to inject?
All right. It's a good question. And you know what? I haven't really seen combination products out in a long time where you're mixing more than one compound together. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a good idea. Personally, I like to take each compound individually so I can customize how much of each I want. Because if you're taking a pre-formulated, product, then you have to kind of go with their ratios of how much test to how much EQ to how much DECA, depending on what's in the compound, obviously the mixture. Here's my also problem. In today's market, because everything is black market, made underground, essentially, there's no pharmaceutical companies making this. The only way to verify if what you have is real is to use the Royd test kits that I sell at my DavePalumbo.com website. Bill Llewellyn makes these things. They're freaking crazy, accurate, great. You can test GH, clenbuterol, all your drugs, any anabolic steroid you can test. But when there's mixtures, you can't test them because they kind of cross-contaminate each other. So I believe a lot of these underground labs now are doing these mixtures purposely so that you cannot verify what exactly is in there. Imagine you put like a sprinkle of DECA powder in there and you put everything else test propionate in there and you can't test it, but yet you say, hey, it's equipoise, trenbolone, and testosterone. Well, you're never going to know because you can't put it into the Roy test kits and test them. So personally, I would stick with single compounds out there. I would do my Roy testing on them, see if they're accurate, and then you could take the ratios you want. If you want 1,000 milligrams of test a week and 500 milligrams of EQ a week, you can do it. You don't have to worry about what's already in the compound. So that's my suggestion. It's, like I said, I don't compete anymore, but if I did, there is no doubt in my mind. Okay, I'll pull up these the Roy test kits that I have here. There's no doubt in my mind I would be testing every single compound that I had. And a lot of these, you can actually test how much is in the compound too with these semi-quantitative tests here. The GH testers we're actually out of. We sell those so fast because there's so many people testing the GH. And I got news for you, 50% of the growth hormone out there is fake, unfortunately. So it's it's very difficult marketplace we have, but you could make it easier for yourselves by sticking to single compound, anabolics and making sure you test everything. That's all you can do at this point. There's nothing else you can do more. But at least don't be cheap and make sure what you're taking is what you're taking.
Second question, World Power Org, interesting one here. In your opinion, what kept Markus Ruhl from taking the Mr. Olympia title?
All the pictures we see of Markus online are always like front shots, side shots, and the guy had pecs to his chin. And he had big delts and good arms. Triceps were a little weak, but he had good arms predominantly and amazing quads. When he turned around, his glutes and hamstrings were a little shallow. And I think that hurt him. His back was massive. Couldn't meet a nicer guy. I love Markus, but I love the freak factor that he had. And I loved watching him compete. But you know what? he was competing in an era where there were guys like, like Dorian and Wheeler and Lavroni, and these guys were just crazy genetic freaks. And, they had glutes, hamstrings, up the gazoo. And Markus just was a little shallow in that area. So he won shows like Night of Champions, but it was hard for him to win the big show like the Arnold or the Olympia. And I think he would still have problems even today. Same thing, because I think his glutes and hamstrings, for some reason, his quads were overpowering, which were great, but I don't know why he had trouble with glutes and hamstrings. He probably just needed orthotics in his shoes. Probably his feet were not balanced properly. He probably fell forward a lot when he would squat and do legs, and that gave him a lot more front, and it took away from the rear. But that's pretty much why.
We have a ton of really, really good questions. Positive we're not going to get through all of them.
Yeah.
So definitely, Dave, you're going to be expecting an email after the show with some of the questions to make individual videos on. But let's go to endomorph. Boy, a very topical question, because I feel like anyone, Dave, that you interview, from the 90s era, this topic always comes up, the debate between free weights and machines. But the question is, do you think gym equipment manufacturers are getting better at creating more effective machines as years go by? It mentions Arsenal machines specifically. Do you feel as if they target muscles better than perhaps some of the older, he mentioned Nautilus, but some of the older machines in the gym?
Yeah, as technology improves, obviously you're going to get better and better equipment. There's no doubt about that. The problem is that there's no machine out there that will give you the development that a free weight will. So if I had to choose, like if I was given a choice, you could either have the greatest gym of all time with just machines or all free weights. I would pick all free weights, especially when I was competing. Nowadays, I still use, now that I have shoulders that work, I use, you'd be shocked at how many free weights I use, because I'm so happy that I can actually do them. I do all my chest work with pretty much dumbbells or barbells. I do shoulder presses with barbells. I always trained arms with cables, because that was my little Vince Taylor trick that I always had. And, if I was able to squat, if my leg worked, I would be squatting still. And because I just love the way my body looks when I train with free weights. And I like the way I feel. The balance aspect of it, I think you get a much better development. But I do see that the new machines nowadays are pretty smooth, and they definitely arc better. They're not like straight up and down anymore. A lot of them are unilateral, where one arm works independently of the others, which I really like too. The problem is they still stabilize the weight for you, so you're not going to get the development that you would get from a free weight movement. Now, for people with injuries and as people get older, I think machines are probably safer to use. And so I think in a perfect scenario, both are important. But if I was advising, like if my son said, I want to be a bodybuilder for whatever reason, and what should I do? I would make him do all free weights, at least for the first, several years of his training, because that's going to give him the best development.
Dave, let me ask you also this, wrinkle. We're talking about free weights, machines. Where do you categorize cables? Because I've heard the argument, in terms of necessity. Where would you, on two ends, where would you put cables?
Well, cables don't really support, stabilize the weight for you. So I would say the cables are like very close to free weight movements as well. You don't really, most people don't do a lot of weight with cables. You know what I mean? So you're not going to be like bench pressing on a cable machine, or anything like that. So, or squatting on a cable machine. The problem is, as soon as you have a machine that, like even a Smith machine, really stabilizes the weight. So if you squat on a Smith machine or bench on a Smith machine, you're losing a lot of the movement. If you're doing cable crossovers, or even, like I said, when I arm train with the cables, I think they're actually better than the dumbbells, because you have more resistance, throughout the entire movement on the way up and then on the way down. And so I just like them. But like I said, you can't really do super heavy movements with them. So for the big body parts, you're probably better off with, free weights. I use cables for like side laterals and stuff like that a lot of times if I'm not in the gym and if I'm in my house, because I like that, this continuous tension on there. And once again, you're still stabilizing the weight yourself. And, a lot of what I do is instinctual by feel, because I've been doing this for a long time. But if you feel like you'll know if the machine or whatever you're using apparatus-wise is doing too much of the work. It's like I see these guys on these power squat machines where it kind of arches over you. You get on the machine, and you kind of push the weight up with your legs. Most people are using their back on everything, because you could just push against the machine with your back. it's very little leg involvement. And they think, you get a good pump in your legs and people think, oh, this is going to make my legs huge. But it's nothing like squatting, because squatting, you have to balance all that weight that's sitting on your back. And that stabilization of all that throughout, it really builds mass throughout your whole body. That's why squats are so good.
Another training related question regarding calluses. Gotten really bad calluses. I've tried lotion, Vaseline. It's gotten to the point now where it's really affecting my training. In your day, what did you do in terms of dealing with calluses?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was getting such bad calluses because I was lifting so heavy. I mean, literally, you'd be peeling them off all day long, or with a nail clipper cutting them off. And it really looks ugly, and it doesn't, your hands are rough. And so what I started doing, I hate to say it, is as unhardcore as this sounds, I wore gloves. I wore training gloves, the gloves with the fingers exposed. And that pad there really protected, the area that you get the calluses on. Also, using, like, this Versa grip is out there, but I make a gripper too, a Dave Palumbo gripper at my DavePalumbo.com website. It's a little cheaper. When you have that kind of covering the bar when you're doing pull downs or anything where you're pulling movements, that also protects here. You don't even need to wear gloves with it. But I would wear gloves. There's nothing wrong with that. It'll protect the hands and it will prevent those calluses from coming. Some people don't like it, but I always use gloves. I know Greg Valentino used to use sponges. And not only that, he used to use sponges that he would never change the sponge. So the sponges were disgustingly dirty and probably growing bacteria in them, but that was his thing. So everyone has their own thing. But yeah, you definitely need something when you're lifting crazy heavy weights to protect the hands, for sure.
Ivan Baninas, there's some really big bodybuilders claiming they use 2 to 3 or even up to 5 grams of test when they grew the most. You say that you felt sick above 1250 mg. But what do you think about people doing these crazy amounts? Does it really equal more growth if you can handle it?
I don't think it does. Now, having said that, I could take seriously 100 milligrams of testosterone a week, and my testosterone level on blood work will be at like 1200. Okay, so I utilize testosterone better than most people. But having said that, I don't believe that anyone needs to take more than 1200 milligrams of testosterone. As a matter of fact, I think 1000 is the sweet spot. I think when you start taking more and more and more, you're just getting more fluid retention. You do get stronger when you're holding a lot of fluid, but it raises blood pressure a lot. It makes you sweat excessively. It can give you indigestion. There's a lot of side effects that come along with that. And I think it's just not worth it, because I think you don't really grow anymore, to be honest with you. There's a sweet spot. And like I said, it's around 1000 to 1200 milligrams per week. If you don't respond quite as well to anabolics, you might need the 1200. But for most people, 1000 to 1200 in that range is exactly the right amount of testosterone. And look, I've tried more, and I've even with clients, I've talked to people that were complaining to me they feel terrible. They got fevers all the time. They're sweating all the time. Their blood pressure's high. And I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, oh, I'm taking two grams of test a week. I'm like, can you just cut it back to like 1200? And they're like, oh, I'm not going to grow. I said, humor me. Do it for 5 weeks, 6 weeks. And every time they do, they're like, you know what? I feel 100 times better. You were right. There's something called, serum sickness. We call it test flu sometimes. If you have too much in your system, it overstimulates the immune system, and the immune system starts sending out flu-like symptoms to you because it's overreacting to this foreign body that's in there in such high amounts. So you could listen to me or not. I don't care. Just because I know plenty of top pros that have been some of the best of all time that never took more than 750 milligrams of testosterone a week. So just because your favorite guy supposedly takes 5 grams of test a week doesn't mean that he's looking better because of it. He might just be causing more side effects because of it too.
Let's go to Biker Marinator. This one right up your alley. Energy sources. Which of these two are the body's preferred energy sources? Dietary protein or body fat?
Well, yeah, it's a kind of a weird question because the preferred energy source for the body, when you're doing fast explosive movements, okay, would be carbs or glucose.
Yeah.
So if you're running, sprinting, lifting weights, you're going to be using glucose as a fuel source. In the absence of glucose, okay, your body will turn protein into glucose, okay, during high intensity activity. Low intensity activity, which includes everything else, essentially walking around, going for a stroll, doing some cardio, that preferred fuel source is fat, because fat generates a lot of ATP, which is the fuel source of the muscle cell, and in very large amounts when you oxidize fats. But if the intensity level is too high, your body can't oxidize fats fast enough to generate the ATP, so it uses glucose. So it depends on where you are. You over the line? If you are, then you're going to use glucose as a fuel source. If you're under the line, then you're going to use fat as a fuel source. You never use protein as a fuel source. You'll only convert protein into glucose during high intensity activity. That's why if you're not, so let's say you're training, okay, real hard, and you're just not eating enough food, and your body is now using protein, okay, for a fuel source, okay, because the brain likes to use glucose, Now, if you're in ketosis, where your body's using fats as a fuel source and the brain is using ketones, which are essentially fats, you're good. But if you're not in ketosis and you're kind of teasing your body with like little bits of carbs during the day, and your brain is looking for glucose all the time, it's going to turn some of the protein you're eating into glucose. It's inevitable. That's why I tell people, once your carbs get so low, you're almost better off just adding more fat and going to a ketogenic diet at that point, because at least you'll protect the protein you're eating, or as we say, spare the protein for building and repairing muscle rather than turning it into fuel for the brain. Hopefully
that's good. Yeah, sorry about that. I momentarily cut off there, so I thought you were done with the answer. Bilal Hamide recently got diagnosed with a hip impingement. What would you recommend in terms of exercises, stretches to not further make it worse? The surgeon told me I need to have surgery done, but I'm hesitant going forward with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you have an impingement in there, it usually means there's some kind of a bone spur in there or something sharp that's rubbing on the tendons and causing a lot of pain and discomfort. And so if the surgeon's telling you that thing, you're not going to make that thing go away by taking nutritional supplements or training and stretching. If there's something jabbing into the tendon or the muscle there because it's sharp, for whatever reason it developed, we don't know why bone spurs happen. It's usually because of rubbing in a weird plane of motion, and it's the body's way of protecting itself. But if it's there and it needs to be shaved down and cleaned out, I would just go get the surgery, because you're suffering unnecessarily. And the problem is if the spur is sharp and it's rubbing on the tendon, if it rubs long enough, it could fray that tendon and make it so weak that it actually snaps. So we don't want that to happen. So if the surgeon is telling you to get it cleaned out and that he thinks that that's going to make you pain-free, I don't think there's any choice you have. I would do it.
Healthy gut. Sarwat Ghalib, for bodybuilders, your recommendations for maintaining a healthy gut, and what should one not do as a bodybuilder?
Well, gut health is a great subject, because, I think a lot of people just don't even think about that. And that's, why I'm really a big advocate of like fiber, supplements. We know what I've talked about Fiberlize, for ages, and everyone tells you how great it is. It helps move waste efficiently through your gut. It binds up LDL cholesterol, so it lowers that. It, makes you go to the bathroom regularly. Let's face it. All right. Poop. A lot of people are very constipated all the time, and it works the colon. It's a muscle, the colon. It makes that colon work and strengthens the colon. But it also, what it does is the fiber, specifically the soluble fiber in Fiberlize, the psyllium, feeds the gut bacteria. So these gut bacteria that are in your colon and small intestine, they actually ferment the fiber. So we know fiber is not absorbable, right? But the gut bacteria can ferment it, use it as a fuel source. The good thing about that is it helps feed those gut bacteria, and then they divide and they multiply so that they provide more cover there. You're actually giving them a fuel source that they can actually utilize. And when they actually ferment the fiber, the soluble fiber that is, they actually send short chain fatty acids back to the liver. And that tells the liver, stop releasing so much glucose into the bloodstream. Because the liver, remember, the liver stores glycogen, right? Which is essentially stored glucose. But the liver is always spewing out that stored glycogen into the bloodstream, which makes the body have to release insulin, which can cause, fat storage. So by restricting how much glucose is being cranked out of the liver on a regular basis and how much insulin your body has to release, number one, you'll have tighter blood sugar control, but you'll also not you'll have you'll burn fat more efficiently because you're not going to be having all this insulin around that wants to store things as fat. And so fiber does so many great things, and that's why I can't stress enough. And that's why it's our number one selling product, FiberLize, at Species Nutrition, because it works so well in so many different facets. And I can't tell you how much healthier your body will be in every facet of life, and even in stuff that you don't know about. Like, I mean, if you take a fiber supplement, you're not going to know that your gut bacteria are healthier, but you're not going to also have any problems with your gut bacteria. And that's an important thing to do. So a lot of people take probiotics, which are great if you're depleted in the good bacteria in your colon. But a lot of times you don't need to. You just need to feed your bacteria that are there already the right stuff that it needs to use for energy. And that's soluble fiber. And psyllium is the best source of it. And we use the highest swell rate psyllium, which is the highest quality that money could buy. And so that's why people feel so good on FiberLize.
So we were talking earlier about the debate between free weights and machines. And you talked about somebody maybe a little older or injured. I'll bring up another scenario here because this ties into this next question. And that is from Ivan Bodybuilding. The question is, if you change anything training wise while you were coming closer to the show, what do you generally advise your clients? Maybe that's similar to what you did during your career, or maybe something you've learned along the way that you now advise heading into a show?
You know what? I never changed anything, to be honest with you. I was squatting up till a week out from the show. I was doing the same exercises. Now, granted, my weights may have gone down a little bit because I did get a little weaker as my body dropped body fat and weight. I wasn't as strong, but it didn't matter because your body only knows what it feels, right? So if I'm, instead of benching 405 for reps, if I'm benching 315 for reps, even 275, but it feels like 405, my muscles are still being stimulated. The biggest mistake people make is they lighten the weights up and they increase the reps as they get closer to a show. Because what they're doing is they're actually telling the body, yeah, it's okay to lose muscle. Matter of fact, we're not even going to stimulate the muscle like we used to. So we'll even tell you, hey, you know what? Let's lose some muscle here because it's not that important to us because we're just doing high reps, and which is an endurance movement. It has nothing to do with adding mass. I trained for a competition as if I wanted to get bigger. And you know what? At some of my contest diets, I did get bigger because I was training really hard and I was eating a lot of protein, taking the right super supplements, all the drugs that I needed to. And I made good results because of that. And that's what you really have to focus on. Like I said, you might not be able to squat the same weights or bench the same weights you were doing before, but even if you lighten the weights and it still feels heavy, you're getting the right stimulation. You're not going to lose muscle. That's the key. You do not want to lose muscle. Therefore, you should not purposely lighten the weights. Does that mean you shouldn't add in extra exercise? No, you can do like more cable crossovers and throw some more shaping exercises in, mix it up in there. Just I used to add some straight leg deadlifts into my leg workout, just for some hamstrings and glutes. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but don't abandon what got you there to begin with, or you will lose muscle.
Endomorph Boy, we talked earlier about calluses and you advised wearing gloves. How beneficial are elbow compression sleeves? I may start using them since I feel an annoying pain in my right elbow from time to time. Just wanted to know your take on them. I find they're difficult to put on and put off. I'll ask the same also for knee compression. I guess if you have any experiences with elbow or knee compression.
Here's my problem with these things. I have a lot of my clients send me videos of them training, and I see some of them wear these knee, whatever they're called, I don't know, neoprene knee things, or they wear the elbow things. And you know what I noticed they're doing? They use them like springs. They spring off the bottom and out of the squat. They spring with the weight off their chest because it adds a little bounce. It adds some flexibility. It protects that joint, but it also adds some resistance there, and it allows you to have a little recoil, And I think that's the worst thing you can do because now you're not using the muscle to lower the weight. You're kind of letting it come down on the gravity and bounce up, with the recoil off either the elbows, sleeves, or the knee sleeves. So I don't like. If you're doing it that way, or that's why you're using them, then you're using them incorrectly. If you have an injury or something's bothering you and you want to kind of protect that joint, for the workout, I have no problem with that. But you should still be lowering the weight under control. You should still be doing full range of motion, and don't use those as a crutch. Okay, because if you do, first of all, you're not going to get the development you want, but secondly, you might get seriously hurt because you'll be lifting more weights maybe than you're really supposed to be lifting and that you can handle. And all it takes is one of those things to slip a little bit and you tear a tricep or something like that. Or a pec. It's not worth it.
Take a couple of more questions. Todd Pyatt Universe. I seem to remember at one point during your competitive days, you experimented with IGF-1. Did you feel it was beneficial to you at the time? Was there a noticeable benefit?
Yeah, I've told the story a lot of times, but what's up, Todd? And the first time I used IGF, which it was 100% real, it came from Australia via Germany. Came from this company, GrowPep, who was the first company to make long R3 IGF-1. And I gained 20 pounds in 20 days on this. And I was only taking 10 micrograms per day. And that's what they told me to take. That's what these German guys said. That they said, just take 10 micrograms a day. As a matter of fact, it came in these bags that you had yellow bags that were light proof because they said that IGF-1 was light sensitive. You didn't want to expose it to light. And it was really expensive. And that IGF, I used it a couple times, a couple vials of that stuff over the next couple of years. And that gave me some seriously good growth. I got to admit. I don't believe that the IGF-1 we see on the market today was the same as what that long R3 was back then. I don't know. There's no way to verify it. There's no test for IGF-1 right now. I think the problem why a lot of people don't get results is they take too much of it. If you take like 50 to 100 micrograms of IGF-1 per day, I can guarantee you within 3 to 4 days, your body has completely downregulated to it and is not even responding to it anymore. Because remember, protein hormones bind to protein receptors on the cell membranes. Okay, so if you overwhelm those too quickly, they pull back their receptors. So now instead of having 1,000 receptors per cell, you might only have 100. So you're going to respond, to 100-fold less. So less is better. That's why 10 micrograms per day always produced better results than when people started taking more and more of the stuff. It's logical. It makes sense. The IGF on the market, I know a lot of people using it. I don't see a lot of great results from it. So that's why I'm not that confident that it might be the stuff that we think it is out there. Who knows? It could be a GH releasing peptide for all we know. There's no way to tell. There's no testing methodology whatsoever. So no one really knows.
Endomorph boy, I've cycled on and off for decades now. I recently off any cycle for 5 years, 55 years old. I recently started a mild cycle, 300 mg EQ, 200 mg test E per week. While I haven't been experiencing the great pumps of the past, I am seeing results. Can I run this dosage safely for a long period, like 6 months?
To be honest, I wouldn't. At 55 years old, I wouldn't probably run it for 6 months. I'd probably do like 12 to 16 weeks max, and then take off, 8 weeks in between there. I don't think it's prudent at our age. I can say our age. I'm 55 too. At our age, to be doing, cycles like that, even though it's not a lot for that length of time. I think you should give your body breaks. I don't think our bodies recover as well in our 50s as it did when we were in our 30s or 20s. And so, I would keep the cycles a little shorter, probably.
Take one more question from the South D Mass. Love the name. Most calories Dave consumed in one day, roughly.
Oh, I don't even who the heck knows. I don't know. I never really count. I probably
have one of those memorable days where you're just like, all right, let's just
I probably have to say it would be days where I did cheat meals. Like that. I mean, that would make sense because I would go. There was this sushi place in Manhattan. I know sushi doesn't only has a lot of calories, but literally, it was probably one of the first all-you-can-eat places ever in creation because we used to go there. I think they had one in California, one in New York City. We used to go there, and we'd drive into Manhattan every week, and there would be a ton of bodybuilders there because I spread the word. Everyone would go there and eat because it was the only place you can get like a lot of sushi. And I'm telling you, there were days where I probably ate 150 pieces of sushi. I don't even know. That had to be like 1,000 grams of rice. And that was at the end of the day. That was like at 8 o'clock at night. So I had already eaten the whole day, all my, probably 8 to 10 meals already in shakes, throughout the whole day. And then I go there and finish off with, the crazy sushi meal at 8, and then I probably would have another shake at midnight before I would go to bed. So I would be shocked if I didn't hit 10,000 calories on many days during my bulking periods, just because I would drink Ultra Fuel, which was 100 grams of carbs, and a Metrex packet all day. I would drink 6 of those a day alone. That's 400. That's probably about 750 calories right there. I mean, per shake. So, and I would throw extra shit in there. So figure 1,000 calories per shake. So I'm doing like 5,000 calories just in shakes probably a day. And then I'm eating all those meals too. Plus, I'm eating McDonald's once a day. That's a dense calorie meal as well. Yeah, I had to be 8,000 to 10,000 calories every single day in the off season. Pre-contest, I ate a lot less, but off season, definitely.
I'm just reading a couple of different surveys for bodybuilders. During the bulking phase for men, roughly 3,800 calories per day. I don't know how accurate this is.
Yeah, you weigh 200 pounds. I was 319 pounds, so
no, I was going to say this.
And I had a fast metabolism,
This would actually be a really interesting question for us to put out, not only obviously to our viewers, but to other pro bodybuilders out there. During a bulking phase, what are they hitting in terms of per day calories? But it's a cool. Yeah,
I was thinking about this, and I said to myself, of all the things that I did to my body as a bodybuilder, between taking performance enhancing drugs, training crazy heavy in the gym, and eating, I think that probably the eating, all the food I ate on a regular basis, because I'm like Nick Walker, I never missed a meal. That might have been the most stressful, strainful thing I did to my body. Think about my digestive system, what it had to break down on a daily basis around the clock. I used to get up 2 times, in my off season during the night to drink shakes. My body never had a rest from metabolizing food. Thank God my liver and kidneys and my digestive system is still intact, because I did a lot of calories, in my day. Now, granted, toward the second half of my career, I wasn't quite eating as much. It was still a lot, but it wasn't like ridiculous amounts of food. So who knows? When you're young, your body can handle a lot of stress. I wouldn't be doing that ever in a million years in my 40s, 50s, or 60s. That would be that would not be a good thing to do to your digestive system.
Before we wrap, again, so this episode, I'm trying to think. Tomorrow, again, we always tease what we already have on the channel. Of course, we have all new episode of Heavy Muscle Radio, all new episode of After Hours yesterday, which was essentially an AMA, but it was more like an AUA, and Ask Us Anything for the Whack Pack.
Right.
So we decided we wanted to extend that over to Iron Rage. Whereas today, when Dave records with Lee Priest, is going to be a Ask Lee Priest Anything type of an episode. I'm looking between the his Instagram post, our Instagram post. You're looking at about, like 90 questions to get through.
I was going to ask you. I said, did we get any questions for Lee? And you're telling me there's 90 questions? Oh my God.
Yeah. So I'm sure you'll have your pick up some really juicy questions, but that'll be entertaining. You may even want to break that into 2-3 different episodes to get through as many of the good questions as possible. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then of course, we released the first segment with Kevin Levrone. We're going to be releasing a couple of more segments and then the full episode. Kevin Levrone's preview of the 2023 Arnold Classic. And then, of course, earlier today, we recorded with Mike Francois and Milos Sarcev. So we got their insights, really, really valuable, knowledgeable insights. Of course, Milos giving his latest for Samson Dauda and his prospects coming into the Olympia. Obviously, the Arnold, rather, their thoughts on Big Ramy, on Nick Walker, Andrew Jack, Sean Clarita, and Kamal Gardney coming up from the 212 and competing against the big boys. So chock full of insight in that episode. We're going to be dropping that over the course of the next few days. So again, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below. That helps this channel. And as always, we appreciate all of your support. Again, that episode of Iron Rage going live tomorrow. Ask Lee Anything. So if this episode drops today, which it will, and you haven't already done so, maybe you want to get your questions in last second, get them in now. And we'll see how far we can take this, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of entertaining as always. Again, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. As always, we appreciate all of your support. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.